Good afternoon, everybody. Today, we are hosting our Ask Me Anything Manufacturing webinar. My name is Heather Brose. I'm with SME. And our topic today is how to fast track your journey to AI success. We're joined by technical expert Humera Malik, and she is with the CEO of Canvas Analytics. She is going to share her feedback based on the questions you've submitted, and we are going to go ahead and get started. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We are recording this session, and we will be making the recording available and probably within the next few days. In your WebEx window, you should see a Q&A area. If you have questions during our webinar today, feel free to type your questions in that window, and we will be looking at those throughout the session. Please note that your questions are being moderated, so we will look them over. If for some reason your question isn't relevant, we may not answer it regarding this during this session, but feel free to reach out to us after the event, and we can try to connect you with an expert that is more related to the question that you had. We will give priority to questions that we get from multiple people, because obviously that's a hot topic, and we want to make sure that we're getting the answers for that to you. We will go ahead and accept questions through about 12:50 today. And at the end of the webinar, when you close out of WebEx, you'll get just a quick pop-up with a couple of questions about to get your feedback on the session today. And we would greatly appreciate you just taking 1 or 2 minutes or less even just to give us the quick feedback. We continue to look to that information to help us plan for the next sessions. And so your feedback is really important in making this the best tool for you, and hopefully we will get some feedback from you. If you have suggestions about topics you'd like to hear about or specific experts you'd like to hear from, please email us at amamfg@sme.org. We collect that feedback and we use that information as we look to plan future webinars. So feel free to share that with us. We'd like to get that information. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second here. Okay, good. Before we kick off our session today, I just want to let you know that we are going to have one more webinar before CMTS, which is coming up at the end of September. Dave Nedouin from Scope AR is going to join us on September 18th from 12 to 1 Eastern Daylight Time to talk about or answer your questions about using augmented reality to modernize manufacturing. So you may have heard of AR, you may not be familiar with it. You may be wondering, what is it? What can it do for me? How do I get started? What do I need to know before I propose this within my organization, or how do I take it to the next level? Dave is going to be with us to answer the questions that you have leading up to CMTS, because Dave is also delivering a keynote at CMTS. He will be delivering our keynote on Thursday, October 3rd at 9 a.m. That will be at the International Center in Mississauga. And so if you're interested in hearing more after the session next month and you want to register, feel free to do so. You can register online at cmts.ca, and you can use this webinar maybe to help prepare you, give you a little bit more information about augmented reality before we actually have the keynote. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Humera Malik. She's the CEO of Canvas Analytics. She drives the vision and growth strategy of the company. And internationally, she's one of the leading voices in AI and how it helps economies, industries, and communities to propel growth, accelerate innovation, and to revolutionize legacy operational practices. Humera has been a recipient of the Women of IoT M2M Award, as well as many others, and she's frequently invited to speak at industry events. She is also going to be speaking as part of the CMTS conference. We'll have a little bit more information about her presentation a little bit later, but I would like to turn the mic over to Humera and let her tell you a little bit about Canvas, and then we will get started answering some questions. So,
thank you, Heather. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you just fine. I'm gonna, if you want to go through the information that you gave us on the slide, then we'll turn the video on here shortly.
Yep, I am about to, yes. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Humera Malik. I'm actually really excited to be here talking to a lot of subject matter experts who come from manufacturing. Heather gave a little bit background about me. I'll tell you a little bit about the company, and then would be happy to answer the questions that we have received and the questions we're continuously receiving from this community here. So Canvas, we are an AI analytics, I'd call it an AI advanced analytics platform, which is pre-built, which has got pre-built AI into it, specifically targeted towards industrial operations. There's a certain need that we have seen in the industry from revolutionizing this industrial approach that we have been taking from going into mass production to actually digitizing our environments in the industrial sector, now to a point where a lot of this physical and digital connectivity is creating a lot of data. And from that data now, what we're looking to do in this community of industrial folks is really how do we actually continuously convert that data into useful information so that operators and people on the plant floor can start using it effectively. And that's really where we connect the dots between converting data into useful and actionable intelligence and information, providing it directly into the hands of the operators on the plant floor. We're headquartered out of Toronto. We do have a global presence. We work with customers in North America as well as in Europe and parts of Asia. We've certainly been very closely working in certain industries and have got customers that are now in the Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 that are leveraging this to take a step forward into future-proofing their operations and their networks. And in that regard, we've also established some significant partnerships with people who hold a very key role in this ecosystem of either acquiring or storing the operational data. We are partners with Microsoft as well as OSI Soft, and we're backed by investors like Google, as well as a lot of global recognition that we have received with our work that we have done in terms of embedding AI into application in the industrial environment, not just from doing all the research and providing guidance to our customers, but actually implementing in real time with patented technologies that we have developed in our platform. So that's a little bit about us. Heather, I'd hand it over to you for the questions.
Great. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with our questions. Humera, I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see you. And there we go.
Okay.
So hopefully everyone can see you. I can see you. Okay, so the first question we have, and I think it's a pretty basic one that probably a lot of people have, is really where do I get started with AI?
Yeah, it sounds like a very easy question, but it's probably not the easiest, I would say. But it's a really good question to start with. AI there's a lot of, I would say, misperception about AI as well. When people talk about automation, they think AI is there to certainly create a fear and replace what they're doing. But the right way to get started about AI is to get educated about it. And before thinking that I am actually going to now implement AI and become this AI company, or I will have an AI project, those are not the things that probably I would advise anybody to go for. It's really thinking through, if you're thinking about manufacturing and if you're thinking about your future of where I'm trying to take these operations in terms of optimizing my efficiencies, reducing my costs associated with unscheduled downtimes, reducing my costs associated with the scrap and the waste matters, improving on my assets, as well as reducing the cost of energy, which seems to be one of the highest costs in certain sectors, either the first or the second cost after the raw material. And if you start looking at the business challenges and seeing what you're trying to do, and then look back into where technologies like AI can come, I would say that's a better way to look at things, rather than saying, I'm going to go implement an AI project and go through that learning. Before you do anything, go about learning about AI, where you can apply it in terms of efficiencies. And I would say there are two segments to look at. One is applying machine learning and AI into places where there are repeated functions, where you're looking to reduce costs associated with, continuously repeated manual functions, but you can somehow apply technologies like AI that can help you actually create that automation that you're looking for, and then use those resources into higher level functions. That's one way of looking at it, is how do I reduce some of the manual interventions and repeatedness from the business and create efficiencies. And the second way to look at it is, now I've got some other data that I collect, and there are higher level functions that can be performed using that data, such as optimizing my process, improving on the quality of the output or the yield that I'm having. That's really where you would apply then the more advanced AI capabilities to make certain decisions that would actually help you enhance the output from your operations, the output from your production lines. So those are the two ways, simply, I would say, AI can be applied.
One of our questions is, which is more important, AI for manufacturing workflow or for product development?
It depends on the kind of the organization. AI for research and development, where companies are using similar methodologies, they would use AI for that purpose. But where you have actually got a lot of complex workflows associated, that's really where a lot of repeated functions can be associated. That's really where you can use AI to further automate that. I'll give you an example where we work with a company that does fuel testing for different kinds of automotive engines. And what they're looking to do is, how do I optimize the fuel? How do I know that what test I'm running, what are the things which are important or not, and how the fuel efficiency would be from these tests that I'm running? And that's more of a research work. But because they run these tests on a daily basis, multiple tests are run on multiple engines and the different kinds of fuel that they're testing on it, they're actually using AI so that they can accelerate that testing process and they can run more tests on it. That's in a research way. But when you're looking to actually automate workflows, or you're looking to actually create more efficiencies in a workflow, that's really where you're looking at how many steps am I performing in a process for my operators that have to go and intervene and make manual interventions and changes to a particular process. That's really where True AI then can be used, where it let AI learn from it and make those adjustments so that you can reduce manual interventions. And in certain of our customers' cases, we have actually brought it down to close to about 90% of manual intervention has been reduced by using very advanced capabilities of AI.
So one of the other questions we have is, how can AI help me optimize floor space utilization as well as process reliability?
I will speak to the process reliability part more so. That's really where we focus on. And I think from a floor space perspective, I can give you an idea about it, but I think because our capabilities are more around process and asset and energy optimization, I'll speak more to that in terms of the use cases. So in terms of process optimization, there are a few ways that our customers are looking at it. Our customers are looking at is how can I reduce, first of all, the cost of raw materials that's probably coming in? How can I reduce the amount of intervention I make to the process? Or how can I improve the end yield of this process? And by looking at that process holistically and then identifying where do I have more data, more usage of this kind of AI where it can actually help me optimize it, we've applied it all three cases. So from a raw materials basis is looking at the output and then identifying what kind of raw materials was used in that and looking at hundreds and hundreds of parameters that are actually associated, which is the quality of the raw material going in, the amount of changes that are made through the process, the amount of energy consumed through it, and then tracking all of that and learning through AI, our customer was able to actually reduce the amount of scrap they were producing at the end. They were able to, and each one of them, they as further sub-isolated, so created sub-processes from that process. So the first one is where, how do I actually improve on my process metrics throughout? We help them sort of gather all of those process metrics along the way. We help them understand what was important, what was impacting that process at that particular time. And that's done using a lot of machine learning and AI by contextualizing that data. Once they did that, then they were able to actually control certain parameters in advance of the certain steps. Sometimes it's controlling the temperature, sometimes it's controlling the percentage of the raw material that gets consumed, sometimes it's controlling actually the amount of oxygen that was going in. So different parameters that they could control in advance so that they were not finding out about changes at the end of the day when they would actually do lab tests or somebody would go in and actually run a test. They would identify what was happening before, and that way they are able to make the changes in advance. So at the end of the day, we're helping them to improve on the quality of the yield from that process. And then there are other side benefits from it, helping them reduce the amount of raw material that was wasted, helping them actually improve on their energy consumption during the process. They're running separate models now to actually even do, how do we control automated energy consumption during that process? So these are very complex processes, so breaking it down into sub-processes, looking at each in an isolated way and seeing how you can start from a small influence and then increase that influence throughout the process.
So your recommendation is really start small and scale up.
Correct. Don't try to boil the ocean.
One of the other questions we have is, can MRP be used in a large 1,200 orders a month job shop with AI to help us with making, I'm sorry, let me read this again. Can it be used in a large job shop when everything's made to order? How can it be used to help them?
So it's actually a really good question, I thought, because one thing which I said, people have certain misconceptions about AI. One thing to understand about AI is you want to apply it where you have knowledge in a repeated way. When you're doing custom builds and custom configurations and custom lines every time where you get certain specs and then you're producing parts according to those specs, or you're creating any product based on custom specs, if you don't have repeated data and everything is custom, it would be a while before you can truly leverage AI in that case. AI is more useful, or machine learning is more useful where you have repeatedness that's there, where AI can help you learn from that and try and either create efficiencies, optimize process, or create automation there. But if you're doing custom job shops and these are all custom configurations, then you have to somehow build them into some sort of a scenario where you can repeat. So if you're getting these orders where every Monday you're running these orders and they're all the same, then I would advise to start with a data lake where you can start to store the similar kind of configurations and let machine learning and AI learn from that. But if you're expecting that AI can come in today and immediately start to make changes in a place where it's all custom-built, configuration-based output, I wouldn't necessarily recommend AI for that.
And that makes sense to me. What are the key vertical AI applications in manufacturing, and which do you consider the ones that have the highest payback?
So different verticals. So let me just take manufacturing a level above. So different verticals are at different states of readiness, and within each vertical, different companies are at different states of readiness. So to say that AI can be applied in one vertical better than the other, I would say it's hard to do that. How we segment the market is the readiness of the customer rather than of the vertical. We have worked in metals and mining industry and have found customers that are at different states of readiness in terms of being able to apply AI. We work in food and ag industry, we work in oil and gas, renewable sector, and now recently also actually getting into pharma. So what we have realized is in most of these process-oriented industries, we have found them at different states of readiness. And even within a company, different plants at different states of readiness. So it's hard to say that one vertical versus the other. But there are certain applications of AI that are better applicable in certain verticals as low-hanging fruit. So for example, we work very closely with the pulp and paper and the food and ag industry and the oil and gas industry in terms of helping them reduce their energy usage. And that's done in very, as I said, start very simple and start in a very small manner. So we actually start off by looking at their energy consumption, by looking at their energy assets. A lot of these customers, especially in these three sectors that I mentioned, they use a lot of natural gas, and they have these boilers, which even a fraction of optimization impacts a lot of their costs of energy consumption, because it seems to be either the first or the second cost in these industries. So we go in, and I would say steel as well. So those four industries, we've gone in and actually helped them get started by optimizing their energy assets and really the entire energy consumption cycle, reduce the amount of natural gas that's been consumed, improve on the assets so that they can increase the remaining useful life of those assets. So I would say a low-hanging fruit for AI, where people can start looking at to test the waters with AI. And that really shows them results that they would be able to measure as well at times. A lot of times when you apply AI in complex scenarios, it's very hard to isolate and measure results, even though it's creating operational efficiencies and you can see it. But from a financial perspective, not everybody is ready to isolate that and measure it. My other recommendation is not everybody's going to get started there. I just gave you an example for certain industries where energy seems to be a big cost to them, so they're looking to do that. But in other cases, we've gone in and in other verticals where we do what we call as an outcome mapping exercise and actually help them understand their overall operational structure of yield. And throughout their different processes, what are the different processes that they've run through, and then how yield is impacted throughout that process, and then where they can start to make small changes to the yield that can, at the end of the day, start to impact the end production for them. So I would say there's no one application that can be applied in certain verticals. It's just depending on where the company is at with their data, where they're in data readiness, where they're at with their technical readiness in terms of being able to actually use that data, share that data, analyze that data, and then where they're at with business. Understanding how data can start to impact their business. Depending on those three areas of readiness, then you can determine what is the best way to get started and where is the best way to get started.
Thank you for that. So we talked a little bit about getting started and some of the verticals, but one of our questions is really related to in situations where you've seen AI fail, what were some of the attributes or the situations that maybe made that an unsuccessful implementation?
So I would probably say that there are two areas where we have commonly observed why AI doesn't succeed. One is not setting the right expectations. If you're expecting that AI is a magic box that can come in and change things overnight, that's really not what AI would do. It's a journey. It's a process you go through of trial and error of implementing it. If you start with looking at 10 processes or 10 places where you want to apply AI, you will probably end up with 50% of those where you can apply AI today, and half of those you might not be. In certain cases, you might be less than 50% of the places. But the value that you can gain from even applying it at 10 or 20% of those places is much higher. So, but you have to have the right expectations, is from a timing perspective, from understanding that you're undertaking this journey, which is going to help you go through this trial and error, and setting the right expectations. It's not about just the outcome of AI. Our customers have helped us learn that it's really about learning more about their process, not just from intuition and experience, but through data. And that's what we've helped them to do. So that's one thing, is setting the right expectations. And the second thing I would say is stay away from insanity. Is if you're expecting that the organization, the workflows, how you run operations today, everything stays the same, and you're going to bring in what I would call more of a cutting-edge technology into your operations and not change, that's not possible. So change management and being ready for that change internally and accepting that this is either going to help me enhance my own capabilities, help me enhance and optimize the operations I'm running, and it's going to help me create new kind of workflows and new kind of processes that have been, unlike the ones that I've been running before. Being ready for that is very, very important. Because if you're not, that means you've set the wrong expectations from the technology, as well as you've got wrong expectations internally from a change management perspective. I think those are, I would say, besides all other things where people don't have data, they don't really understand how to apply AI, and they still jump at it without having really a clear understanding. I say those two would be, I think, the top two cases where we've seen AI fail.
I would think that adopting AI and being change averse would be completely incompatible concepts, because the whole point is you want to utilize AI to make improvements and streamline things and make it better, so that naturally results in change.
But if you're not accepting that, Heather, that you want to go through that change, that's where it fails.
Yep.
And we've seen that.
One of the questions we have is, if cybersecurity cannot be solved but requires constant vigilance, and that vigilance is being applied by a manufacturer, doesn't it make sense to apply and continue to expand the competitive advantage offered by advanced analytics? Okay,
I'll have to break this down. So this is, if cybersecurity is what they're looking to do, what's the role?
I think the kind of the point is like, cybersecurity can't be solved. You have to constantly be looking to maintain it and stay ahead of it. It's not like a one and done fix. And then when you're looking at advanced analytics, wouldn't you think about it the same way?
Okay, so I absolutely agree that it is not a one-time thing that you would do a sprint and that's it, and then you're AI ready. It's really, you're going through several sprints and you continue with those sprints, and as you apply it in one place, you see the benefit of it, then you go to the other. That's how really it is. It's a continuous, what I would call is using AI. Now implementing AI, you're going through continuous improvements using AI. Instead of using the traditional methodologies where you were using tools or best practices, now you're actually automating part of that continuous improvement cycle, and that's really where AI comes in.
So we talked a little bit about some of the ways that make it easy to fail with AI. how does that impact, like, when you're looking at a company's culture in adopting AI and looking at it as a strategy for growth? Like, what aspects of the culture do you think are applicable to making that decision? Are you ready to kind of take the next step forward with AI?
I'll answer that question with an example of a customer that actually set that precedence, and then we've seen other customers now repeat it, and that's really where we have seen success. How companies can implement something like AI more successfully is by first getting a commitment from the top to every level who would be engaged. Manufacturing is very, very complex and a very busy environment. It's hard to prioritize things when you have, burning issues happening all the time, unscheduled downtimes to, delivery issues to other things. So these are very complex operations. So how do you prioritize something that you don't know what it would do for you, which obviously requires commitment from all levels, which means that, if an executive just says, I want to implement AI and nobody else is bought in, those projects don't go anywhere. So it requires an organizational commitment, is where we think we can go for disruptive technologies, more bleeding edge technologies like AI. We think we have an idea where we can get started, and the organization is going to stand behind the change that it's going to bring for us, and then we would evaluate how we scale that. So it's the first level of commitment that is needed. The second part that we have seen very successfully is, obviously, as I said earlier, start from one place or two where you see the benefit of it. And then you actually get what we call as a SWAT team within the organization that helps you implement this. These are the people who become your change leaders. They are the ambassadors for change. And what they do is they are at every level of the organization, from having an executive sponsor to somebody from the IT side, somebody from the operations side, and then somebody who's going to be a champion from having the know-how and learning about AI and going to work together with this organization. That's kind of the champion team that we have seen our customers develop. And I'm talking about very large scale, but you can do it at a very small scale too. And we've seen that change then, those change agents become sort of the ambassadors that actually start showing the organizations, look, this is where we have implemented it. This is how we have seen success. How can we get the organization ready? And that's really where they bring about the convergence between IT and OT. They actually bring about the convergence at every level of the organization to make things successful. So it's really, first is organizational commitment. Second is having the right organizational structure in place. Then when you're trying to scale it, that you have actually the champions internally to support it. Because if IT does not allow you to share the data, but the operations side is still going out and doing these projects in silo, they would always stay as test projects. They would never scale and benefit the organization as much as they can. So it's very important to bring the entire organization together at a level where there is a buy-in, and then you can start to roll this out across, where you can start to roll it across a similar operation in multiple facilities, or you can roll it across multiple facilities once you have actually seen how this can be rolled out, what our data strategy would be, what our cloud strategy would be, how would we roll this out at several places, and who's the right partner. And that's really where we go in and partner as the key provider of AI. We enable our customers for success through that mechanism or through that process. So I would say it's really commitment at all levels, and then being able to get the right places to implement, and then showing that success, and then continuing with that success. So, and committing to it in the long term, not for the short term. If you're looking at benefits from a short-term perspective, this is not where you would want to waste all of the organizational efforts, because that's really where a lot of these companies fail when they go for looking for benefits. I'm going to achieve these benefits in this short span of time. It's really about creating, how we call it in a 3-stage process. It's about creating the value using AI. It's realizing the value using AI when you actually develop the organizational structure, people, process, assets, everything around it. And then after you have created the value, is now optimizing the value using AI.
Oh, that sounds like a lot. We have someone who's looking to find out more about how AI fits in with SPC, data mining, and deep learning.
So deep learning is obviously part of AI. So this could be a whole other topic about where deep learning can be applied. I'll give you one quick example. So we have used some of the deep learning technologies in optimizing certain processes where our AI agents, this is reinforcement learning. So AI agents are actually controlling the parameters, and they're basically keeping these parameters at the optimum level so that the process engineers don't have to constantly go in and monitor and do lab tests and things. But deep learning is being used to actually monitor and control the parameters at the optimum level. That's just one example, but anyways, Heather, a whole other topic for us to go into deep, and they can contact us, and our team would be happy to walk them through it.
Great, thank you. We had a couple questions related to AI and Six Sigma. Are those compatible? Is one required for the other? What are your thoughts as far as that goes?
As I said earlier, you can implement the best practices within the organization in order to now scale those best practices using certain technologies where you're optimizing processes, optimizing assets, and creating a digital workforce. I think that's really where technologies that AI can come in and complement that. So it's not that one or the other. They can go hand in, and they have gone hand in hand, where certain best practices are being implemented using methodologies like Six Sigma. AI comes in as a technology that helps you to further enhance that and automate some of those best practices as well as create an organizational culture around the use of data that allows you to continuously implement those best practices.
What do you see the role of edge and fog computing in the manufacturing AI ecosystem?
Yeah, the only other thing that I would say besides AI that somehow has lots of definition and things is really fog and edge computing. So I think edge has a role in certain industries where you can have edge in two levels. One is from a data extraction perspective. One is implementing the models, where some low-level decision making is being done. So from a data extraction perspective, not everybody has been ready to basically have the right data structures in place, have data lakes in place, and historians and everything. So from an edge data extraction perspective is we work with certain customers, specifically in certain industries, to use the capabilities from an edge perspective to acquire that data from the PLC and help them actually create those kind of data lakes that we can start to use for applying AI and machine learning. And now implementing models at the edge is really where you can make certain models that can bring about decision making at the edge. Close this valve, open that valve. You don't necessarily have to have all the time the intelligence that you need for that decision making, but if they're based on more of an event or decision making has already been learned by the model, you can implement those. But those are in certain specific industries where you can apply. So I would say it's something that needs to be considered as part of rolling out AI, is where does edge become applicable and where it doesn't. But it's not in all cases that you would start off that way.
Do you see a lot of potential synergies between CMMS solutions and AI solutions?
I think yes. A lot of these the computerized monitoring solutions that basically provide a diagnostic view of the operations are certainly part of the data that helps AI and machine learning. So I do see that they're part of, if I was to draw out a chart for an ecosystem of the different kinds of players and people who are part of this ecosystem, I do believe that those kind of diagnostics and mechanisms do help AI from getting that data that is needed for learning purposes.
How do you think AI will impact OEE?
So that's not, I wouldn't put it more in, I would put more as how is AI today impacting it. That's really very clear from some of the things that we have done in terms of reducing the number of cycles, in terms of reducing the number of interventions from the operator side, improving the metrics associated with running their process. This is one area where, and improving the efficiency of the assets. This is OEE is one area where you can certainly see the impact of AI. Even though this is one place where I would say the manufacturers are more comfortable with as well in terms of using it as a metric for creating for measuring the success of other different kinds of technologies that they have been using. But I think AI certainly is a key to help them measure and improve on some of their overall equipment effectiveness and how then that equipment actually impacts the process they are running. So yeah, it's certainly playing a role. I would say machine learning and AI certainly plays a great role to help them improve the overall effectiveness of their equipment, helps them improve remaining useful life. So it is eventually over the near term to long term, it will eventually become core part of how you actually measure and improve on OEE.
Can AI be used to provide insight on dimensional measurement data?
Hard to answer, Heather, because it just depends on the case.
Okay. How do you give the data on the data input processes, which are more in the user data analysis area versus manufacturing with machine, and the results output to enable AI to learn where there are inefficiencies?
So a lot of the user data doesn't necessarily get tracked. But the way to, and the way I read this question and the example I would give you is, let's say there is a process that's been run and there are 3 operators, 3 different shifts that are running the process. And if we're actually looking at how the equipment has been performing or the process has been performing, and if you see certain trends and certain aspects of the process at a certain time, and you're getting better yield from it or somehow better output from it, you can easily relate it back to say what time, which operator was performing certain tasks. And then also baseline, what is good versus fair versus not so good from that. And that's how you can actually start to look at the operator side as well and create consistency of the process instead of everybody turning knobs and setting their own parameters. You can create a set of consistency as well. But usually it's hard to do directly from the operator or from a user perspective. You do it more so from how the interaction was on the basis of the data you're collecting from the process and the machine itself.
Oh, okay. So we have a little more clarification on that question. So I guess they mean more in the data analysis step done by operators and not machine operators.
Oh, okay. As long as they can capture that data in some way, this would be very useful for AI because now you're looking at a 3-dimensional view. Usually when it's done in a traditional way, model process controls, they look at 1-dimensional view of data, one particular instance. But if that data is being captured from an operator perspective, then we do consider that data as well.
We hear a lot about the pros of AI. What are some of the cons?
It's not for every place. It's not for every operation that you're running, not every asset that you might be generating 2 data points, and why would you want to use AI there? So I would say the one thing to be careful about is AI is not the end all and the answer to all of the challenges and operational efficiencies you're looking to build. AI is more towards where it stops, where humans can stop making, or humans are challenged because of the amount of the data or the complexity of this of the information that they're collecting is really where the true role of AI is. So I would say is if you implement AI in places where you don't need to or you don't have to, that would probably be a part of the cons or part of the failure where AI cannot be implemented or shouldn't be implemented. Other technologies as well that, you know, when you look at holistically from building operational efficiencies in your business, that can be implemented. Sometimes this is, you know, implementing some visualization tools. Sometimes it's implementing something else. So I would say, you know, really it's carefully evaluating where you can or you should apply AI.
What's the best way to store data to make it ready for AI to analyze it? Is it a relational database or NoSQL, or is there some other format that is preferred or optimal?
Not really. It's not about the best way to store data, because when we plug it into data, we transform it too. We have dealt with relational databases, NoSQL, you know, coming from different kinds of historians. We've extracted data directly through from their PLCs as well. So I would say it's not about the storage part, it's really about the quality and the contextualization of the data that matters more. So independent of, you know, how you store your data.
We're almost to the end of our session today, so if anyone has any last-minute questions that they'd like to get answered, please go ahead and put those in our Q&A window. We're going to wrap up here in a few minutes and just give some final closing info. One of the last questions I wanted to ask you is, when you look at the Canadian manufacturing landscape, what do you see as kind of like the rate of successful implementation of AI within Canadian manufacturing, especially in, you know, the last year or so?
I would say is Canada, in our opinion, because we've worked both in Canada as US as well as outside of North America, I would say Canadians are probably, some industries are early adopters, some not so much as we would like to see them. They're getting on that path. So we're in the Canadian market, you know, we have obviously a huge automotive sector of, you know, OEMs as well as part manufacturers that are just about getting ready to implement this, and some of the Canadian support system that's been created through Supercluster and other things is helping them actually adopt AI now. I would say in terms of implementing this in the metals and mining industry, we're seeing more and more success there. And then another place where we're seeing now some success come through in Canada, specifically on the West, is really looking at the oil and gas industry, because when especially you're going through your own challenges of industry challenges, AI really comes in to help you improve consistently in building better products with reduced costs, better margins. And it seems like that the energy sector in Canada is now really that's really where they're trying to make their more recent investments. But I think I wouldn't call us necessarily the early adopters. I would call us the followers after those early adopters. That's how I perceive the Canadian market to be.
Okay, good. I'm just checking here. What is the best way to learn about AI and get ready to start on that journey? As I said earlier, there's so many places to learn about it. One is obviously within your own industry, looking at people like yourselves, like you know, CMTS or other people, where you would hear not just us, but our customers and others that come and talk about it, is where they have gotten started. So there's a lot of, I would say, reading that you can do, but it's really going back and looking at your own businesses and processes and seeing. I know that AI can be applied in cases where there's data, where that data can be made into useful information, and that useful information can be used in a repeated way. That's really, I would say, is a start-off point for us, a start-off point for anybody to consider.
best way to learn is looking at all of these manufacturing, I would say, is hubs and associations online to see what's being done with AI, but that can also be sometimes very overwhelming. So I would say just be careful with not just getting overwhelmed, but once you have a basic understanding of AI, talk to places where people have actually applied it. And then you would be able to pick up places, how do you best get started with your project. And once we actually work with our customers, we do help them also identify where it's best for them to get started.
And Humera, as you mentioned, CMTS is a great place to meet other people who are doing this now and have implemented it. We have a full track in the conference on automation as well as the digital transformation. And so being able to hear from people who have gone through some of these situations and made these implementations and put this technology to work is always good, but then also being able to just talk with whoever else is attending those sessions to find out, do they have some of the same challenges you do, or have they come across some solution that maybe you haven't thought of yet? That's always a good place to meet a lot of people with some similar interest in that topic.
Yep.
Well, I think we are about at the end of our session. Let me see here. I'm going to pull us back up here, and we definitely want to mention that Canvas is going to have a presentation at CMTS. So as we were mentioning, there's a lot of content that can be helpful for you related to automation, including some AI presentations. Specifically, the presentation at CMTS, the Canvas is involved in, is why AI is necessary to future-proof manufacturing. That presentation is going to take place on Wednesday, October 2nd at 2:30 p.m. And if you want to know more, you can go to cmts.ca. If you add a /event-schedule onto that, you will get the full event schedule, including all the conference, keynotes, workshops. We have a plant facility tour coming up. So take a look at that, see what sessions make most sense for you, and hopefully the one by Canvas will be of interest and can help you maybe take the next step. So Humera, I want to thank you on behalf of SME and the CMTS team. Thank you for being our resident expert for this month's webinar. It was a pleasure to have you, and thank you for taking the time to answer all these questions for us. If people have additional questions for you, what's the best way to reach you or someone on your team?
I think the best is to just email us at info@canvas.io.
And that's CANVASS.io, correct?
Yes.
Great. Well, we are also going to have live Ask Me Anything manufacturing sessions at CMTS. So if you enjoyed this webinar format, check us out. We'll have some information coming soon on the website, but we'll have live face-to-face sessions at the show. The event, again, is September 30th through October 3rd. It'll be at the International Center. You can get more information at cmts.ca. Registration is free for a limited time, so please take the time to check out the schedule, see all that there's to offer. Not only do we have great programming, but we've got more than 700 manufacturers who are coming to showcase technology solutions, of which automation and AI are a key focus, and we hope to see you there. So we will provide this recording, and so you can share it, listen to it later, but we will be seeing you soon. So thank you, Humera. And thank you to everybody else, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everyone. See you next month. Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.